What is evil? Evil is necessarily defined in negative terms. It has to be. Evil is doing what is not good. There is no way around this. You can say, well, evil is what harms people. Evil is what is bad for humanity. But again, you are referencing your idea of morality to define evil. You must think that doing what is bad for humanity is evil because you think what is moral is to do what is right for humanity. Any definition of evil is dependent first on a definition of morality, and there is no way around that. So the question becomes, how then do people who have no coherent definition of morality or no objective definition of morality call things evil? Atheists and agnostics, people who reject God, often will claim that they believe in objective morality. However, if you question them, that usually falls apart. Ultimately, it gets down to what I think should happen is good, what I don't think should happen is bad. And I can prove that. First, let's talk about what Christian morality is. God, according to the Christian faith and the inspired, revealed Word of God, is the necessary, ever-existent, all-powerful, all-good, all-knowing being. And everything that exists outside of him was created by him and is sustained through him. And so the Christian definition of morality, quite simply, is defined by God. God is the ultimate standard of what is good, of what is right. How can this be? Well, because God is all-knowing and all good. He is perfect. Being perfect, by definition, means that he does not do what is wrong intentionally. All-knowing means that he cannot unintentionally do something evil. Because when people do things that are harmful and immoral, they do it for one of two reasons. Either they know it's wrong and they do it, or they do it thinking it's good but don't know enough, and what they do actually ends up being bad. God is incapable of either, because his very nature makes him both perfect and all-knowing. And so the definition of morality from a Christian perspective is the nature of God himself, which has been revealed to us through Holy Scripture, through the prophets. The teachings and law of God are our guidebook for being like God and attaining, in as much as we're able, to that higher divine sense of morality. For a lot of atheists and agnostics, this sounds like a childish fairy tale, delusional definition that makes no sense, and oftentimes will be argued, well, religion is just made by men. It's just men and women who are pushing their opinion on others and claiming it's God. Now, as a Christian, my belief in God is not based on, well, the Bible says it. Because why would I believe the Bible over anything else? Why wouldn't I believe in my neighbor Marianne, the atheist, who tells me she knows right from wrong, or the Quran, or the Hindu Vedas? Why would I trust the Christian Bible and the Christian God? That's another video. The amount of evidence for the existence of God and for the nature of God and for the authenticity of scriptural revelation is overwhelming, way more than most Christians understand. A lot of Christians build their faith on a very shaky foundation, not being well educated in the research and in the arguments for God. And when they're confronted with an atheist who is smooth and has a biting sense of sarcasm and makes them feel small and stupid, oftentimes their faith folds. That's why it's essential, if you're a Christian, to know why you believe what you do. And the Bible tells us to do this. It tells us to test everything with fire. It tells us to argue, to debate, to be always ready to provide a reason for our faith, and to not be caught ignorant. However, like I said, the reason for believing in that is an entirely different video. For now, let us compare the biblical definition of morality to the non-biblical definition of morality. Specifically, the atheist and agnostic lack of a definition for morality. You have some who will be self-aware enough to realize that their morality is simply an opinion. There are many atheists who will openly tell you morality is subjective. It gets down to a matter of opinion and desire. People do what they want. They promote values that are personal and benefit them, and that's what all morality is based on. They are at least being honest about their viewpoint, even if they are wrong in their understanding of morality. Most atheists are either lacking in the self-awareness to see how little of a foundation their beliefs have, or are simply dishonest about their beliefs. For most, it's ignorance. I'm going to give you a slightly fictionalized recounting of a conversation I had with an atheist to show this. And by slightly fictionized, I mean it's a real conversation I had, but obviously I'm going to change some of the details and the names to protect the people involved, as well as flesh out, add things from other conversations I've had with similar people, conversations that have went along similar lines, to help flesh out the arguments a little more. It's a rhetorical device, a way to demonstrate how this logic works, a way to talk through the logic of it. Now, this actual person, female, was a survivor of ritualized sexual abuse at a very young age, had a very hard life, had a father and female family member who did horrible things to her. She suffered at the hands not only of her abusers, but of her mother, who knew what was going on, who covered for it, who became jealous of her because the affections of that mother's husband were going to the daughter instead of her, and who took it out on the daughter. This woman lived a horrible life and suffered horrible things, and is very bitter toward God for allowing such things, understandably to a degree. A nun once said that if you want to know why someone's atheist, find the trauma. This is true. Almost every hearted, committed atheist I know has had a life full of horrible trauma, and they are full of anger. Anger is what is behind committed, militant, religious atheism. Anger and resentment, hatred for God. Most atheists are not self-aware enough to even know this. Any atheists watching this video, I can guarantee you most of them will be rolling their eyes and thinking I'm full of shit. But I've lived long enough and talked with enough atheists and seen enough of them eventually come to Christ and become more self-reflective and honest about their beliefs in the past, that I know this to be true. This woman is somebody who I've known for a long time, who I love and respect. I brought up the subject of morality because she was condemning beliefs of mine as evil. And I asked her, on what ground do you condemn anything as evil? What is evil? We talked and reasoned through what evil is. I showed that the definition of evil is dependent on the definition of morality. The conversation then shifted to morality. Through the conversation, she insisted that she believed in objective morality at the beginning. She said, when I asked her what the source of that morality is and what it's based on, she claimed that through evolution and societal evolution, over time, we have learned what works best for people and society. And our morality has evolved and improved as our biology has. And our current moral beliefs probably aren't perfect, but as our society continues to evolve, our morality will become more and more advanced, just as our biological state does. Now, this is an argument I've heard from a lot of people. It's missing something. Why is societal ethics, why are societal ethics considered moral? There are societal ethics, things where we say that's unethical and that's unethical, but ethics and morality are different. What is your morality based on? Well, this is better for humanity. Is it? How do you know? For which humans? Across what period of time? More importantly, why is that the value I should base my ethics on? Why is it any better or worse for me to base my morality on what's best for me, rather than humanity as a whole? Or on what's best for my family? Or on what's best for my nation? Or, as Nazi Germany did, on what I think is best for my race? Why should I have to base my morality? Why is morality necessarily based, according to this argument, on what's better for humanity? What makes your moral framework better than mine? Objectively, based in fact, what makes it better? Oh, well, humans just flourish and do better when we do what's best for society. So, what if I don't value that? Well, you could choose to have your morality based on anything. I choose to... So it's not objective. It's your personal value system of what you believe is right. No objective basis at all. Maybe what's best for me individually is not best for all human society. Maybe a competitive society in which everyone does what's best for themselves ends up being best for all society. I'm not saying that's true, by the way. None of this is my opinion. I'm simply talking through the logic of this. Because one of the problems with morality is any morality based on human reason is shackled by ignorance. The road to hell is paved by good intentions. How many times have people done what they thought was best for society? Or best for their race? Or best for their country? Or best for their family? Or best for themselves? And it has ended up being horrible for whatever individuals or groups they had meant it to benefit. That's the problem with human morality, because we are not all-knowing. That's why basing morality on our own reason and experience necessarily leads to tragedy. A lot of Nazi Germans thought that what they were doing was best. They thought that what was best for the world and for humanity was to exterminate the lower, more sickly, diseased, violent races, and to create a super race that was completely peaceful, that was hyper intelligent and morally superior, as well as more fertile. A lot of Nazi thinkers honestly believed the science at the time completely backed up their beliefs, which, by the way, the scientific community really was on the side of a lot of that thinking. So you cannot use science as your guide for morality or logic, because in their minds it made perfect logical sense. They believed that in 1,000 years there would be less violence, less suffering, less death, more life, more peace, more joy, more beauty, more health, and more prospering for all of humanity if they freed the world from the bonds of sickness, disease, ignorance, and immorality brought on it by ignorant, wicked, subhuman races. All of this belief was built on a Darwinian worldview, which, ironically, this woman in my story holds very strongly to the Darwinian worldview. Now, in reality, the Nazi approach led to huge human suffering, massive death, the destruction of their own nation, the destruction of their own people, and the destruction of many other people. But for all of those high-minded Nazi thinkers who thought that science and logic and reason completely supported their beliefs that what they were doing was for the betterment of all of humanity and for the flourishing of humankind, how can you say they were evil? You can say they were wrong, you can say their science and logic were flawed, but you cannot say they were evil if morality is simply doing what you believe is best for human flourishing. Do you see the problem here? Now, for many of those Nazis, they knew what they were doing was wrong. They were evil, they knew it was evil, they didn't care. It was bitterness, vengefulness, it was apathy and resentment. But for many of them, they were high-minded, intellectual evolutionists. They were college students, college professors, politicians, thinkers, who thought that what they were doing was genuinely for the betterment of mankind. And according to this woman's own logic, you cannot condemn them as evil. The worst condemnation you can bring against them is that their knowledge and science hadn't advanced sufficiently enough. That seems to be very little comfort to survivors of the Holocaust who watched their families be tortured, raped, and killed. Every bit of you, on the deepest level of your soul, knows that what happened was evil. It was not ignorant, merely ignorant. It was not merely not scientifically advanced enough. It was morally evil, objectively, beyond any shadow of a doubt. And if no human being on earth believed it to be evil, it would still be evil, because objective truth does not require agreement. If your morality is based on, well, as a society, each society establishes its own morality, what we believe is best for humanity, it's just a societal agreement, okay? Then you have no objective case for morality, because one society may believe that one thing is moral and another society may believe the opposite is moral. And both of those societies may do horrific things that, again, deep in your soul, you know are evil. But neither would be evil. The worst allegation you could bring against them is ignorance. But the biggest objection to all of it is, if your values that you base your morality on are just a matter of opinion, then the man who raped you, tortured you, and destroyed your life is not evil according to your logic. He simply had a different opinion. His morality was based on what was better for him, on what brought him the most pleasure. And your morality, being a morality that is inclusive, as this woman's is, and accepting of other cultures and worldviews, and that believes that there is no objective evil, and yet these morality you hold yourself to, your opinion, your values, are based on being non-judgmental and inclusive according to your own standards. You are evil according to your subjective morality for judging him for his actions that were simply based on his understanding of morality. Obviously, that's not true. Obviously, what he did was horrendously evil. You know that. You know that deep in your heart. You know it was objectively evil. You simply hate God. You may not know consciously that you hate God, but you do. You hate him because you can't understand why you were brought into this earth and why at your most vulnerable, all of this was allowed to happen to you. It broke you. It hurt you. On the deepest level, it destroyed every relationship you've ever had, and it haunts you to this day. And your father did that to you. Your father, a position, a divine calling that's supposed to represent God's relationship to creation. When you are a father, you are supposed to be imaging God. Your relationship to your children is supposed to be a mirror of God's relationship to his creation. And you know that. Deep down inside, you know that. And because your father was so evil and depraved and lost, you see what he did as a direct reflection of God. But you have to understand, your earthly father, who is no father at all, did those evil things because he despised God. For the same reasons you did. For the same suffering you endured that he endured. He adopted the same subjective bullshit morality you did. He justified anything he wanted to do because there was no right or wrong. He was God. His morality was based on his values. And his values were, I will do what is right by my own eyes. And those are your values. You have become your father. You have become your father as he became his father. He became that way because he rejected God. Now in this case, this woman's father was a hypocrite, a man who used religion as a weapon to control and hurt others, a man who claimed to be religious but secretly despised God, a man who was homosexual, cheated on his wife, abused his wife, lived a double homosexual satanic life with a co-worker who was a Freemason who he did literal satanic occultic homosexual rituals with and engaged in ritual satanic child abuse with. He was a worshiper of Lucifer. He was a deeply, deeply evil man, but he professed Christ. Why did he do that? Because he's a child of the devil and he wanted to drive a wedge between you and God because he knew that only God can save you. He knew that only God could save you from the hell that he is in. And he is in hell now. Make no mistake. And you will spend eternity with him. You will spend eternity with him if you stay on this course. Because you are choosing your allegiance to him and to his master, while rejecting your true Father, who loves you, who cares for you, and who said that the man who harms and corrupts the child, it would be better for him to tie a millstone around his neck and to jump into the ocean than to do what he did to you. Because God will unleash his wrath on that man in a way that is beyond comprehension and for all eternity, with no mercy and no hope and no reprieve. You are choosing to follow him to that fate. Do not chain yourself to a fallen man. Reject him. Reject your false father and his satanic father, and come to Christ, because Christ alone can save. And there is no such thing as right or wrong, only opinions when you reject God. You know in your heart, because God wrote his word on your heart, you know on your heart that good and evil exist. You know that what happened to you was evil. You know that all he did was evil. But in the denial you're living in, and with your current worldview, you are absolving him of his crimes. You are saying that he simply had a different opinion. You are justifying everything he did to you with the way you're living your life and with your rejection of God. So my prayer to any atheists or agnostics listening to this video is, please consider the arguments I've made and the words I've said, and think about, what do you base right and wrong on, and what is the effect that has on society? How does that affect you? How does that affect those around you? And most importantly of all, is it true? Truly true. This is not something you can afford to get wrong, because the consequences are eternal. They're bigger than you can imagine. Now, I said that there's overwhelming evidence for the existence of God. I will be making another video at some point in the possibly distant future on that. There are many great people out there who have made videos far better than I ever could on that. If you seek him with all your heart, you will find him. If you are truly curious if God exists, if you actually search with your whole heart, I promise you will find him. And you will find that the evidence is so overwhelming that it can only be denied through madness or ignorance. Right now, you're shielding yourself with ignorance because you're afraid of what you'll find if you go too deep. Go deep. See the truth. Believe the truth. And may God lead you to everlasting life. Have a good day.